What's going on, fellas? This is a conversation I've had with many people over honestly the last decade or even more. I've always been an advocate for more teams in the playoffs. I always thought the BCS system was pointless. To this day, I still think the top 25 is very pointless. The top four teams was very subjective and not objective. And now we have a 12 team playoff where it's really top 11 plus one. Much better. I still think it can be better than that. My hope is that there will be one day a 32 team playoff. And a lot of people call me crazy when I say this, but I've argued this for many years, and there's a reason to the madness, guys. The main reason for this is there are about 149 or 150 FBS schools. In basketball, we allow 68 and then the last two play in, the last four play to get in teams, and then it's a 64 team tournament. In FCS, I believe they have a 24 team playoff or a 32 team playoff, but I believe it's a 24 team playoff. So the FBS has always stuck to two teams playing for the national championship. That was very, once again, subjective, either by computer systems that made the decision or subjective opinions from 13 members who were clearly SEC biased. And now we have 12 teams. And if you haven't noticed, in week 2, by the way, 6 of the first top 7 teams are SEC teams, and only Ohio State is up there. That's outside of the SEC. That was actually very interesting to see after week 2. And for good reason. I mean, some of those teams, I can't argue. They belong in the top 7. They definitely belong there. So I'm not going to argue that point, but that was just a very interesting thing to see. So with all of this and a 12-team playoff, one day if it can reach 32 teams, I just want the top 25 to matter plus 7 out. That's all I want. That's all I'm asking for. There's so much more teams in other sports that we don't even complain about. But for some reason in football, we're mad about adding potential 5 games for the 2 teams that play a national championship. If you add 5 games to the NFL season, to the college football season, that's just a regular NFL season, which the best of the best are going to end up in anyway. So that gives them more experience, more exposure, and things of that nature to play with different teams that they may never see otherwise, which can make the game a lot more fun. And money is definitely not the issue, so that argument, I don't even want to hear that. But one of the best things that I love about this 12-team playoff system is we no longer have to really worry about undefeated teams. I've never been a big fan of college football teams just being completely undefeated. We don't expect perfection in high school. We don't expect perfection at the NFL level, but for some odd reason, we do at the college level. And this is kind of where I'm such a big fan of NIL and what it has done by complete accident. It created more parity across the board. More teams have a chance to win a national championship now. It's given us bigger playoff picture and showing us that 2 teams is not enough, 4 teams is definitely not enough, and eventually it will show that 12 teams is still not enough because the top 25 still do not matter, and that's still the name of the game right now. So with this in mind, one other thing that I would love to be added to NCAA football is the use of a preseason. I don't want these cupcake games to count. There's no reason for 76-0 to look good on a scoreboard. That's not really what I want to see when I see a big school play a smaller school. What I'm truly looking for in those games is who's on the bench, who's on the bench that we don't know about yet, that has not gotten that exposure. Maybe they don't even have enough reps in practice. Now let's give them a chance to show themselves. Who's also on the third team that may be a hidden player that, once again, we just don't know about. And I would love to learn more about some of these players. The starters, I kind of want to see them maybe for 1 or 2 drives at the beginning of those preseason games, just kind of like the NFL, the way they do it. Get them in, get them warmed up, just get them in the flow of playing football again, get them off the field and find out what you got on your bench. Build the morale up for the smaller schools as they can better compete against the second team or third team of these bigger schools. And then see what they can do. The games will not count against the smaller schools. It will not count against the bigger schools no matter what happens. The smaller school can still get their check so that they can run their season. And Everybody wins. We get more football at the beginning of the season, and you don't have to come out with the first game being like Clemson, Georgia. Because I'm pretty sure, you're rusty. You can't play your best. You haven't seen a different team other than your scout offense and scout defense at practice. It makes it different when you see a completely different team and you just got to go week one, So having that experience, I think, will change a lot. But now also, after week two, we're starting to already question who is the best one-loss team. Is it a Notre Dame? Is it LSU? Some of these other teams that can come along? This is going to actually be very interesting. Like, for example, if Texas stays undefeated until they play Georgia, or Oklahoma's also undefeated until they play Texas, whoever loses out of those three teams are still going to be in. Those are going to be three great one-loss teams if they all end up with one loss. Let's just be honest. That's the facts. They're all going to be in because they're probably three of the best teams in college football right now. They're not the best, but they're in the top 11. Anybody can argue that point, And Notre Dame, I still don't understand Notre Dame. They lose games that they have absolutely no business losing. And it's kind of mind-blowing because they do this every year, it seems like, under Marcus Freeman. I don't know why. I don't know if they're overlooking the competition just because it's a smaller school like Northern Illinois that comes into your house and beats you. And by the way, for Northern Illinois, that was their first top 10 win in program history. Or if you just, for some reason, thought Marshall was going to be easier than you thought in 2023, or even Louisville. You just kind of look over these teams and then you lose those games and you have no explanation for it. But that also goes the same for Colorado. I mean, let's be honest. They're not where they should be yet. That O-line needs some work. That D-line needs some work. They're not really in sync. What I'm hoping for Colorado is they give a few more years to Coach Prime, because coming in to a school that, not many people will talk about across the college football landscape for many years, and then all of a sudden you want to build it up to be something, it's going to take you 3-4 years just to establish recruiting and everything else that you need, the coaching staff to stay and all that, just to have a solid team around you. And I really, really hope that Colorado is willing to give Coach Prime the needed time to actually build up what he truly needs there, because it's not going to happen in 1 year. It's definitely not happening this year. And it may not even happen next year, but it could be the fourth year. That could be the magic year, His value that he has brought to the university, people buying tickets, selling out games, season tickets are sold out, everything. Merchandise sales are up. Nationally televised games. I mean, all of these things, the notoriety he has brought to Colorado has to mean something. It has to be valued for something. His value is so high. And I really, really hope that they do everything in their power not to lose him. Because seriously, over the last 2 decades, let's just be honest, we know Colorado football is there, but who's talking about it outside of Colorado families that have kids that are players? Or people in the state of Colorado. And even then, I don't even know if the people in the state of Colorado are really talking about Colorado football. So, obviously, they just recently had their game against Nebraska. Nebraska's looking great. Dylan Raiola played very well. But he did make some questionable decisions that I think better teams, especially in the Big Ten, will make him pay for. But he kind of got away with it with Colorado this past weekend. Nebraska played very well in the trenches. They were always in the face of Shedeur Sanders the whole time they were there. So that was actually, an enlightening thing to see happen, because once again, it confirmed that O-line didn't really change much. Maybe too many people have transferred out of Colorado after the football season last year, and the people coming in are just not in sync. They don't have that chemistry yet, So it's going to take a little bit of time for that to develop for them. But Dylan Raiola, he's just a freshman. Imagine the recruits he can help bring to Nebraska now that they see that, oh man, this kid can actually play at the college level and play very well on top of that. Recruits will want to come there. NIL will also help Nebraska. I'm pretty sure the boosters will get together and put money together just to bring some of the better players there, and it will happen. Especially now that there's 18 teams in the Big Ten, you have to compete. You can't just sit back and say, oh, we're Nebraska, we're a mid-tier team right now, and that's what it's going to be. It just doesn't work that way anymore, you know? And during the game, Nebraska and Colorado, I had seen a sign that they actually showed on camera, and it was actually pretty cool. It was a woman holding a sign that said, my dad told me, oh, no. This is the Husker football my dad was telling me about. And that was a very interesting thing to see. It was actually pretty cool to see. So there's that. And then the different mentality happening across college football. This one I think is the most fun, if I'm being honest, because college football is now something that I'm starting to enjoy the love of the fact that no one has to be undefeated anymore. And I know I mentioned this earlier, so I'm not going to go over it again, but there's a different mentality now. You know, after we seen Florida State lose their first game to Georgia Tech, it wasn't all about, oh, hey, the season's over and we're done. You know, let's just go back and put this away. That was not the case. You know, and that was the best part. But ultimately, still, my hope is we get to a 32-team playoff at some point. I've said this for years. I'm still going to advocate for it. And I can't wait until they make it a reality, you know. But this was just a quick conversation, guys, about, you know, more teams coming into the playoffs and what's been going on in college football over the last 2 years and the effect that NIL has had in college football. But you know, there'll be more definitely to come, especially week to week, and we'll definitely talk about this more and more. But thank you guys for listening, and peace out.